This is an all-in-one water cooler, or an AIO, or a closed-loop cooler, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it an AIO, and these have become extremely popular in PCs, especially recently. But despite this, there's a relatively strong and vocal community of people who oppose using them, as well as a reasonably vocal community of people who support using them. But what I'm going to do here today is just go over a few scenarios where I think using an AIO in your PC is a good and practical choice. I think the main reason AIOs have become a lot more popular over the years is mostly down to aesthetics, and I have to agree with people when they say they look pretty damn good in builds. But people who oppose using AIOs will normally tell you a few things. Number one, that the performance of an AIO is similar to that of a high-end air cooler, and they cost a lot more. And we'll get back to that one, but the other 2 points are that AIOs are a lot less reliable and a lot noisier, and both of those relate to the pump. So reliability, the pump adds another point of failure, and if the pump dies, it renders the cooler useless because that coolant's not going around the system, and you can't just replace it like a fan. If a fan dies, you can easily replace it, but if your pump dies, you have to RMA your cooler, and if you're out of warranty, you're stuck with a rather interesting looking paperweight. However, pump reliability has gotten a lot better over the years. Those earlier generations of AIOs, the pumps would give out after a few years. It wasn't uncommon. But modern failure rates are extremely low, so whereas I think this argument has precedent, it's not super applicable to modern units. Also noise, so again, with those older generations where the pump ran at a static speed, especially at idle, you could get a discernible hum coming from the pump that you would be able to hear over the rest of your system, whereas air coolers would be able to remain a lot quieter. But again, pumps have gotten a lot better over the years, and now they run off of controllers, so that at idle they run at slower speeds, keeping them quieter. And I use the Kraken X62 as an example here from NZXT, just because it uses the latest generation of design and it's relatively well reviewed at this point. The Kraken X62 at idle, with its slower pump speed because it's running off of that controller, is as quiet as high-end air coolers like the Noctua NH-D15 and even the D15S. This is because the pumps have gotten better. So again, whereas I say that argument does have precedent, it's not super applicable to modern units. But let's start talking about some of the reasons why you should buy an AIO, and we'll start by cycling back to performance. So the high-end liquid coolers like the 240, 280 or even 360mm radiator coolers will perform that bit better than high-end air coolers like the Noctua NH-D15. I'll put a link to a few reviews down below that show this, but this is pretty well documented at this point. However, they do cost a fair bit more. You are paying a lot for that little gain in performance. However, this is for you to decide whether it is worth the extra money to get that bit of performance for your specific scenario. The next reason why you might want to purchase an AIO is a particularly prominent one, and that is RAM clearance. All high-end air coolers require you to have low-profile RAM because the heatsinks and fan will sit above the RAM sticks. And this isn't so much of a problem if you're building a new system because you can just buy low-profile RAM, there's a lot of it out there. But if you're upgrading an older system, you already have tall heatsinks on your RAM, or if you have your heart set on a particular set of RAM, this can be a bit of a deal breaker. And all-in-one liquid coolers don't run into this problem because they just have that CPU block that sits over your CPU socket. So there's your next benefit. Next is a reason to buy the single fan coolers. So we talked about how the dual and triple fan coolers perform a bit better than the high-end air coolers, whereas single fan coolers actually perform similar to, if not worse than these coolers, and cost about the same, but that doesn't make them useless, because a lot of cases aren't quite wide enough to accommodate tall heat sinks, but they will still have 120mm mounting points for you to put an AIO. And in addition to this, a lot of small form factor cube cases nowadays accommodate the space above the CPU with something like the power supply, leaving you only enough space for a low profile heatsink. severely limiting your performance. But they're also accommodating radiators a lot more nowadays, so you have to check with your case, but a lot of them allow for a 120mm radiator and fan to give you way more performance than that low profile heatsink, which will not only allow you to run quieter, but may even give you more performance if you can do some overclocking. My final reason you should buy an AIO is actually what gave me the idea for this video, because I got into a relatively heated discussion on a forum where I recommended somebody did this and somebody else pretty strongly disagreed with me without putting any real point across as to why. Despite the fact that the original poster was pretty happy with the idea, liked it, did it, and was very happy with the results. And that is that AIOs allow you to take the heat from your CPU and transport it to another part of the case, allowing you to optimize your cooling, whereas CPUs cause the temperature inside your case to increase. Yes, the airflow is directed towards the exhaust, but some of that heat still increases your case's temperatures, causing other components to run hotter. But if you were to put an AIO as an exhaust, then all of that CPU heat is being directly expelled to the outside. However, in this scenario, you are taking the hot air from your case and funneling it through your CPU cooler, so your CPU temperatures can suffer. However, if you want to go with the opposite route, you can use your cooler as an intake. So put your AIO as a top or front intake, and that means that your CPU temperatures are going to be a lot better because they're using the ambient air to cool them, not the hot air from inside your case. And this is what I recommended to somebody when they said their CPU temperatures were getting way too high after they upgraded their graphics card. It worked, their GPU didn't suffer, their CPU temperatures dropped dramatically, and they were able to overclock their CPU, giving them better performance. And this for me is a very compelling reason because it gives you that much more flexibility on how you can cool your system and optimize it for the best possible results. Now, of course, all of these depend entirely on your particular situation, and if none of these scenarios apply to you, then an air cooler might be a perfectly legitimate option. I'm not saying that everyone should go out and buy AIOs, far from it. All I'm saying is that there are particular scenarios in which AIOs are a much better choice than air coolers. And I'm not trying to bash on people's purchasing choices either. If you want to buy an air cooler, that's fine. If you want to buy a high-end air cooler for your locked low-power CPU just because it looks good, then that's fine as well. If you're willing to spend that money on something that I think is a little bit overpriced for your use case, then I'm not going to stop you. That's a perfectly valid reason if you like it. If you are happy with the product that you buy, then that is all that matters, okay? All I'm trying to do is give you a bit of information so that you can make a more informed decision so that when you make that purchase, you are happy with it afterwards. That is definitely enough for me for today. Thank you all very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it was just something I wanted to get off my chest because I think that any option for cooling your CPU is perfectly valid, and you shouldn't just disregard an option because of your own opinion or particular situation. But I promise I'm going to stop now. Rate this video down below and comment your opinions on AIOs, and let me know if there are any reasons why you should buy one or shouldn't buy one that I didn't include here. I'd love to hear what you think. Other than that, go and check out my channel for other tech-related videos and consider subscribing while you're there. But I'm definitely going to sign out now. This has been Frank Jaeger with Jaeger Tech. Have a good one.